Alright, welcome to Operation End Times. I'm your Jedi warrior for Jesus, Bent Hillestead, and today I'm bringing you the Venus Conspiracy Part 4, Revelations. Hopefully you've seen the Venus Conspiracy Parts 1, 2, and 3. If you haven't, probably should go on back and check it out. Today is April 12th, 2012. Got all sorts of crazy stuff happening in the world. The chaos continues. All sorts of earthquakes and cosmic events, solar flares, planetary alignments. Most of it revolving around Venus and or the Pleiades. Venus right now is headed towards the eye of Taurus, a star called Aldebaran. It's a giant red star. It's going to align with the star. I think it has meaning. It's the eye of God. You know, in the Bible, in parts 1, 2, and 3, I was kind of talking about how Jesus is the morning star. My friend Bert, he told me to look at Revelations 2, verse 28. And once again, Jesus is talking about believers in Jesus surviving the tribulation, overcoming the tribulation. And Jesus basically, this is before verse 28, he says, hey, to he that overcometh and keepeth my works to the end, I'll give him power over the nations. I'll give him the ability to rule with an iron rod. That has some deep meaning because, see, when the paradigm shift happens and the pyramids of power that have existed for the last 26,000 years while Satan has ruled the earth, when they're all flipped on their heads, there'll be a rule with a rod of iron. What does that mean? It means, for one, evil can't hide. Evil can't sneak around. Evil can't be sinister anymore. Because you know what? Those that have the power are going to have the red eye. The ability to see evil where it exists. And they're going to have the power to do something about it. And you know what? That's where verse 28 comes in. Jesus says, I will give him, the person that overcometh the tribulation, I will give him the morning star. It's a power base. It's Jesus' power base. Venus is the planet of love. And that's something we're going to talk about today in part 4 as we get into the conspiratorial side of the Venus conspiracy, because I've talked about the mirror concept or reflective images, but it's how something can be both good and bad. Like money, it isn't good or bad, but it can be used for good or bad. But symbols, a lot of times, like a planet, like Saturn could be Satan's planet, but some people think it's God's planet. It could be either or. I tend to think it's Satan's planet, but that's kind of where Venus comes in. Venus is love. Venus is a morning star. Venus is Jesus. And yet, the five-pointed star, the pentagram, the symbol of Venus, nowadays, most people consider it a symbol of evil, a symbol of the occult. The pentagram with the circle around it, it's like a sign of Satan. And you know what it is, if that's what you want it to be. It's part of the great deception at the end. The deception's so great, even the elect, they can't tell the difference. That's why there's a Christ and an Antichrist. The Antichrist looks just like the Christ. Except, you know what? If you can actually perceive the truth deep down inside, the Antichrist isn't good. Has sinister intentions. And that's where the eye of God sees all. He knows. But you know what? I think the 1,000-year reign is where the saints, the elect, are going to be empowered to work right alongside Jesus, to where, you know, it'll be rule with a rod of iron, meaning evil will not be tolerated or allowed to fester and grow like it is today. Look around the world, man. You know, evil's everywhere and growing by the minute. You know, in Syria, Assad is massacring people. You know, there's atrocities happening everywhere. And, you know, that's what we're going to see with this Venus conspiracy today as we look at it, because when we look at our planet, there is a lot of evil associated with pentagrams. I'm gonna talk about that. But, you know, in Revelations 2 verses 28, Jesus says, I will give him the morning star. You know, another thing I noticed, right at the very end, Revelations 22 verse 16, you know, I, Jesus, have sent mine angel to testify to you unto these things in the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright and morning star. So once again, you know, Jesus just confirming, you know, that Venus. And, you know, that doesn't mean Jesus is not the planet Venus. You know, but Venus might be his throne or some kind of physical manifestation of his power. You know, I actually think, you know, when you read Revelations, when they talk about Jesus coming, I think the first sign of Jesus coming is the planet Venus. That's what we're going to see first. You know, like when you read Matthew 24, verse 30, it says, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And we know the sign of the Son of Man is Venus. You know, and then after the sign, then you get to actually see the Son of Man coming. But, you know, I'm thinking, you know, we're just learning all these crazy things about the universe. So when the sign of the Son of Man, that's going to be Venus, probably with electrical bolts shooting from one end of the heavens to the other. And, you know, we find that, you know, back in the book of Revelations. You know, pardon me because I tried to mark this stuff. But, you know, every time they describe Jesus coming, like Revelations 19 verse 12, it says his eyes were as a flame of fire and on his head were many crowns. You know, he was, and out of his mouth was a sharp sword. You know, that's lightning, I think. You know, but, you know, even Jesus in Matthew 24, and, you know, when you're reading Matthew 24, I'm telling you, man, this is just my perspective. You may agree with it, you may not, but it's not linear anymore, man. You know, like one verse to the next, seriously, it's not, you know. And that's one of the mysteries of the end time, because that's why it's the end of time, because Venus and the Pleiades is what all of ancient man, you know, the Mayans, the Egyptians, the Chinese, you know, you name it. Everybody orientated their pyramids and their buildings and created their calendars. The Sumerians, according to the Pleiades and the orbital paths of Venus through the zodiac, you know, which forms of, you know, surprise, surprise, a pentagram, a five-pointed star. That's what Venus forms as it orbits with Earth around the sun, progressing through the zodiac. But Matthew 24 again, you know, Jesus talking about coming, and he says, for as the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall be the coming of the Son of Man. Lightning flashing in the skies. You know, and there's all this new science out there talking about the electric universe and thunderbolts of the gods. And when you look at Mars, it looks like a planet that was just hit by a huge thunderbolt. You know, and even the explorers that went up there, they found these little blue balls, which are like what happens to rocks when it's hit by electricity. They kind of morph into this glass-like round sphere. They called them the little blue balls of Mars, you know, but it's evidence of electricity, huge lightning bolts, you know, being thrown across the solar system and perhaps across the universe. And, you know, we got these alignments, you know, on 1221. Venus is involved in all of that, you know, with the center of the universe, where, you know, could be some kind of energy wave. You know, some people are talking about the sun possibly turning into a red giant. And once again, you know, every time they talk about Jesus coming, he's got red eyes flashing, you know, red giant star, you know. Sounds like kind of similar language. But, you know, a crazy verse here Matthew 24 verse 28, it says, "For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together." And I was like, what the hell is that talking about? You know, but that's like an end time picture. Carcasses and eagles gathering. Eagles might be angels. Some people say it's not eagles, it's vultures eating the dead bodies, you know. But once again, if we go back to Revelations, right? And you, I don't want to waste a whole lot of time looking up these verses. That's why I tried to mark them. But you know, that you find similar language. God. Yeah, here we go. But you know, there in Matthew, you saw that the verse, you know, saying where the carcass is, there you'll find the eagles. Once again, we go to Revelations and chapter 19, and it says, and you know, once again, this language sounds like it's a planet. You know, it's Jesus too, the Son of Man, but it's also Venus, his sign that people are looking at. But you know, it talks about, "I saw the heaven open and the white horse, and there was a flame of fire, and on his head many crowns." You know, and you know, once again, you know, it's verse 17. It says, "I saw an angel standing in the sun." You know, Jesus is the archangel. You know, he's Michael. You know, but Venus is between us and the sun. You know, Venus is transiting the sun on 6/6. Now, I'm not saying that's when this verse is going to happen on June 6th, but it's the same concept. Venus standing in front of the sun. "And it cried out in a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, Come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God, that ye may eat of the flesh of the kings, and the flesh of the captains, and the flesh of the mighty men, and the flesh of the horses, and all of them that sat on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great." But that's where the paradigm shift is going to be, you know, where all the people at the top of the pyramid are going to meet doom and destruction, and the birds are there to eat. And then, you know, that sounds just like the verse we're reading in Matthew. You know, where the carcass is, there you'll find the eagles as well. So anyway, that brings us back to the conspiratorial part of it all. You know, if you want to hide something, hide it in plain sight. And that's what you're going to find, is that it's hidden right in front of our noses. But, you know, ancient man, the Mayans, the Egyptians, all of them, you know, if you look at their hieroglyphics and how their buildings are orientated, they're pointing right at the Pleiades, they're pointing right at Venus. You know, so they're not hiding anything. Now, I think over time, sinister forces, and they're everywhere. And you know, when I say something sinister, like America's sinister forces, or the Vatican sinister forces, or you know, anybody's sinister forces, that if you personally are Catholic, that doesn't mean you're sinister. But you know what? The people at the top of the pyramid just might be. Same here, if you know, sinister America. You know, if you're an American, that doesn't mean you're sinister. But the people at the top of the pyramids of power, they may be sinister. And sometimes, you know, whether we want it or not, we may be unwittingly or unknowingly supporting sinister things, you know. So that's what we got to wake up to. But, you know, when it comes to Venus and the pentagram, the five-pointed star, which is the symbol of Venus, that's what it is. You know, we find that all the things built by ancient man pointed to and had it incorporated into it, but you know, as above, so below. And when we look at the world today, you know, like the Vatican has a pentagram built into its design. Rome had a pentagram built into its design. Everybody knows, you know, look it up on the internet. But the United States of America, which, you know, the Illuminati and the Freemasons, you know, they're the skull and bones, the tri-lateral commission, the rule by secrecy, all that exists here in America. And we all know the founding fathers were all a bunch of Freemasons. And if you look at Washington, D.C., there's a pentagram laid out with the way the city is. And all our monuments, you know, from the Washington Monument, all point to Orion and the Pleiades and incorporate the galactic clock and Venus. There's no denying it. So America is steeped in the occult. And you know, I'll link it in, but there's some blog pages, but you know, there's these huge pentagrams going across the United States called the Pentagrams of Blood, and man, it connects all the disasters and evil things that's ever happened over the last like 100 years in this country. You know, is it just a coincidence? I don't think so. And you know what? I'll show you. There's another pentagram, a blood pentagram drawn across Europe that actually uses the concentration camps that Hitler had as some of the points that create the pentagram of blood. And that's what they were saying, you know, Hitler was doing was an act of just pure evil, where the Holocaust was sacrificing human, live human, you know, Jewish people to Satan. You know, why else would you be putting people in the furnaces? And you know, I found there was a website, you know, Norway has a huge pentagram across its whole country, you know. So once again, you know, the way you hide something was put it right out there in plain sight. Now, of course, you know, now we can see this stuff with Google Earth and our satellites and all that. It's pretty easy to dig up the information on it. So, you know, I'm just going to leave that for everybody too. But the point being is, it's not all fantasy make-believe, man. It's real. Open your eyes. You know, the United States, our money, has it right on there. It's a pyramid with the all-seeing eye at the top, and that thing is all calibrated towards Orion. You know, our space program, you know, NASA is steeped in the occult. There's no denying it. You know, one of the original scientists, a guy by the name of Jack Parsons or John Parsons, you know, he was a complete occultist, and you know, they had the pentagram was part of the design of the rockets that sent men to the moon. And you know, George Bush, if you go to the NASA website, type in the Orion program. That is the future design of our future rockets to get into outer space. So why is it that everything NASA is doing, you know, from its logo patches to the names of its programs, you know, are all just smothered in the occult? You know, their satellites they use all have names, biblical names, or Sumerian names like Enlil or Eve. Oh, it's just purely by coincidence, you know, like none of that crap really exists. You know what? Right, you need to wake the hell up. So that's the point I'm getting to, you know. Like you take the pyramids in Mexico, and the pyramids over there in Egypt, and now they're finding out there's pyramids everywhere, man. They're in South America, they're in Bosnia, they're in China, they're in India, and they're all built and aligned to Venus and the Pleiades and the constellation of Orion. And it all points to a great cycle being completed, to the forces that are driving the end time cycle, the battle of good versus evil. So guess what? You know, Venus, the five-pointed star, represents pure evil and Satan, and it also represents pure love and Jesus. That's the way it is. But what Venus is doing right now, if we follow it through the sky, it's giving us signals and warnings. Stuff could happen right in real time as the alignments are made, or I think it just says, hey, we're in the window, like check it out, these events are about to unfold. So what I'm going to tell you, man, you know, this is just me, you know, putting two to two together, looking at it. 2012, we're going to have some mind-blowing, supernatural, divine intervention type events happening this year. But I do believe we're still in the front end of the final week, the 7-year window, you know, of the final tribulations as laid out in the Bible. But what I'll tell you is time in and of itself, you know, it's not going to be as constant as you think. It's going to become as jumbled up as reading through the Bible, man. Because at the end of time, you know, eventually some new time is going to exist for us. But, you know, I just think time's going to be this real funny thing, man. So, you know, is 7 years 7 years? Or is it something slightly more or less? You know, kind of hard to say. I'm not God. I can't tell you exactly how time works. But the time to prepare, the time to know what's going on, I know that that is here. You know, because depending on whose side you're on, you're going to have to make some decisions. You know, and that's where we'll get back to, you know, the Into the Wilderness series and how to transit the tribulation. You know, that's a whole nother topic. But, you know, Venus is driving everything. you know, even in December, there's an alignment of Saturn, Venus, and Mercury with the Sun right there on 12/3 through 12/21. You know, we got the Venus transit. But I do believe Venus, you know, that's the big mystery. You know, NASA and even the Russians, you know, for the last couple of decades, that was the #1 planet. They were sending satellites and stuff up there to try and figure out what is going on with Venus. What's the big mystery with Venus? And guess what? It's still pretty much a mystery because it's clouded. The clouds are so thick, and, you know, maybe we know the topographical layout of the planet, but I'm telling you, it's still a big mystery. And you know what? With all the supernatural cosmic events about to unfold, maybe life as we know it, the Earth could change in ways we don't know, you know, pole shifts, an energy blast, our DNA being modified, who knows, but chances are Venus might be, you know, involved in that change too, you know, in the new, the shift of the power paradigm and how things work. All right, you know, I'm not really keeping time on this, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up about 20 minutes. This is Ben Helsted. The Venus Conspiracy, Part 4, Revelations. I'm going to try and bring you Part 5. You know, there's still more stuff to throw out there. And at the same time, you know, stay with us at Operation End Time. Send me your input. Send me any questions you got. You know, I'm always open to any ideas, suggestions, or information. And, you know, we'll even be diving back into, you know, the next progression of Into the Wilderness, the Exodus 2012. What does it mean? You know, is it real? You know, but the Venus Conspiracy, you know, keep your eyes to the heavens. Venus in Aldebaran on the 15th. And, you know, it eventually goes into retrograde on May 15th, which is the 1-year anniversary of my Tribulation 515 2011 blog. All right, well, hey, that wraps it up. This is your Jedi Warrior for Jesus, Ben Helsted. Hey, God bless y'all and take care.